big sin and little sin. See, they're kind of pushing Jesus on this one. You know, the ones that have a boo-boo over here, the wall fell on them, did they sin more? You know, or, you know, when it crashed in there by the altar, did they sin more? Don't, listen, this is honest. How many of you have a difference of sin across the abacus? That's not even. What would a little sin be? You're not going to talk to me, I'll talk to you back. What would a little sin be?
Little white lies.
Little white lies. Yeah, God looks past those, don't they? Just like those little no-see-ums that eat the plants. My mom picked up her tomatoes one time, took them all into harvest, and couldn't figure out why she kept getting these bumps on her. She had all these little, what she calls no-see-ums, into the house, and they were having a grand meal on her, leaving the tomatoes alone. So a little sin is just a little white lie. Okay, what's a big sin?
Murder.
Murder, or multiple murder, or what happened to those kids recently. Mm-hmm. That's why we're not God. Because I don't think we could be fair. I don't think we could be just. And I don't think we know what the mercy would need to be there. Think about it. Something getting that close that it stirs you, and inside you know, I'm in the vineyard. I'm here to help. However that is. You know, that's hard. And that's why we're not the judge. And that's why Jesus clearly says we're not to judge. If this happened more to another by sin, but to back away from that sin. Whew. Please turn away. Turn away from that which harms you and your relationship with each other. Are you listening to me? You know what they are. I don't need to pick them out. I know what they are myself. I know the behavior I do that damages a relationship and has damaged relationships. I do. I've had to say I'm sorry. I don't know if some of y'all may be waiting for that day to do the big sorry. See if you can sneak it in underneath the door. I'm ready now. Hated it. You're with me. There are people that procrastinate and they think, you know, just let's have some fun and, you know. You know what the greatest thing is? The same creator that planted that vineyard planted that lone fig tree in those grapes. And it wasn't very, in the beginning, they didn't look so much different, those sprouts. But as time went on, the fig tree knew that it was not like the grapes. Way down so deep inside of the fig tree that it didn't even put on fruit. For someone would see what that fruit would be. And it would not be grapes. So the tree stood there all alone in all the grapes, trying to find just one other person that understands the makings of the fig tree. For it is different. And it stands out. They say, why do you got that fig tree in there? It's dead. It's not only dead, it's probably an abomination to your grapes. It's only there to shadow the grapes so they won't grow. It's all about taking over your vineyard. Certainly God didn't plant that. Look what God planted all around it. But the fig parents didn't even want to see their fig baby in the grape yard. Maybe the fig brother and sisters didn't want to see the fig tree in the vineyard. And there is nowhere to hide when you're a growing fig tree. At least a grape could lay on the ground, crawl under the vine and say, I didn't do it. But the fig tree is right out there. Here I am. And then all of a sudden, the fig tree here is so awful that they're going to cut it down. And by that time, that fig tree is so low, it's going to be a blessing to be cut down. No more do I have to stand in the middle of people and not be like them. No more going to places and pretending that I don't know who I love. No more living with pronouns. been so isolated from what they say created me. I just want to die. And personally, I don't care if I go to heaven or not, because I'm probably not welcome. And out comes a gardener. I find that interesting, because when the tomb was opened, some of the women thought what they saw was a gardener. It was Jesus. It was Jesus they saw. But they thought it was a gardener, because there was a transformation in who Christ was and who Christ is. And so this gardener comes in and says, don't pick on the fig tree. It hasn't had a fair shot at life. Never got the chance to have the shot at life that all these grapes did, who become beautiful wine. I said, let me just go ahead and put a trench around it that I can water it, put some manure on it. You should have heard what I was first going to call this sermon. Puts the manure around and starts to nourish that tree. Nourish them with songs of praise. Nourish them with prayers of hope. Sit by that tree and read scripture. Read the red letters to the tree. Until that fig tree knows that that fig tree is exactly the way that the fig tree is. You don't give up on it until they absolutely know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we're not a mistake.
That's right.
We are not a mistake. We're not a misplanted fig tree. Even if the fig tree is misplanted for Lent, we aren't that.
Amen.
There's a lot of things we talked about in the beginning. We talked about the first service about tempting and testing. We talked last week about fear. This week is about redemption, and I just want to tell you, as one who has been redeemed, like Big Daddy Weave. You can go on YouTube and hear what he'll tell you why he wrote this song. But you can almost figure it by his words. You've been down there in those gutters. You've been down there in that bottom wondering if you're going to make it to the next day or if it's even worth it. We know that, and that is such a neat thing, because when you get so miserable and you turn, you go up.
Amen.
We can't control when or how redemption is going to happen. It's probably the part of what Christ gave us that sets me on my heels and then my knees. I didn't have to be good to be redeemed. You don't have to be good to be redeemed. You have to be aware that you need redemption because you're screwing up. And then it comes. It comes, and it is something that is so powerful, no one can ever say, I'm not sealed in again. I'm not the only one that went out there and made a big mess of stuff. I've been on my knees. And I said, I tested my God. I know we're not supposed to, but I did it. I said, here's my fleece. You either let me know by feeling or showing me that I am redeemed, or I will never preach another sermon. I don't have to do that very once. It's not something that I play, like walking out of the door on God and slamming it. Come sunrise service, I knew that God reached down to this pastor and said, "You're redeemed to me." That's what Jesus was doing. Jesus was taking all the sins and the garbage and the wars and the hate that happened before his time to the cross so that we get a new life. And that new life is up to us on how we want to live it. It doesn't need to be based on our poor childhoods. Because if it's based on our poor childhoods, what part are we living in? Heaven or earth? Earth. If we're living in heaven, that stuff falls away. Don't matter no more. But if we come together and we say it, any place you're at that you want to be redeemed, it is so powerful. It has probably been the biggest power I saw in God my whole 55 years of life. I told another brother of mine one time that was having a hard time, and I said, this is what you need to do. You need to get out of that chair and get down on your knees. You can do it with me here or later, and when you get down on your knees, you need to cry to your God with every ounce of your being. And you need to share your sin and your shame and the mishap that you participated in. You need to lay it out there. Don't deny it. Don't rework it. Don't make a self-help book out of it. What is that about? But lay it out there. You don't make a program of it. You lay it out there and you say, here it is.
Amen.
And then, in the blink of an eye, a miracle happens. Now I know all of you, some of y'all like critters like me, you know, you like the critters. I like this story because it just kind of spoke to me, kind of reminds me of me. It's a story that's told by Paul Lee Tan. Sees this little boy coming with a cage, old homemade cage. And in this homemade cage are some birds. And so the pastor says, what you doing with those birds, son? He said, well, I'm catching them because they sing pretty and then I can sell them. I said, oh, and are you selling the birds for how much? Quarter. Well, what about these little birds? Oh, you don't want them, they can't sing. Nobody want to buy them, they just sit there to bang. And my cat doesn't meow good. But this little canary couldn't sing. Probably because it's female. Could not sing. Because he can't. The males are the pretty ones, I'm sorry. It's enough to make you change your life about. Oh, thank God now. I have been made. So he walks up to this little boy and he says, well, what are you going to do with those birds? And he said, I think I'm going to go back to my house. I'll play with them for a little while and then I'll probably feed them to the old cat. And the minister says, I'll give you $2 for the cage and the birds. Well, it was okay, it's a deal, but you're making a bad bargain. The exchange was made and the boy went on whistling, happy with his shiny new coins. Gordon walked around to the back of the church property and he opened up the cage. And all those little birds flew free. The next Sunday he took the empty cage with him to the pulpit to illustrate his sermon about Christ coming to seek and save the lost. Paying for them with Christ's only blood. The boy told me the birds were not songsters, said Gordon, but I released them, and they winged their heavenward. They seemed to me that they were singing, redeemed, redeemed, redeemed. Won't you turn